she'll explain. I give you Merav Ben David.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's great to see what a thriving community you guys have here. Yeah, it's very different than what we have in learning. Learning more or less get together for the holidays. So I know they have Bible study on Friday evening. I don't know how many people come. So it's really great to see a thriving community. And maybe we should have more exchange with Whitland too. so this is really great. How many of you, I know some of you are from Israel, but how many of you have been to Israel?
Wow.
Yeah, that's quite a bit. A special place, isn't it? You can walk a street in Tel Aviv and feel you left Wyoming and went to New York City. And then 45 minutes later, you're in the tunnels under the Kotel Maravi, and you feel that you're going to see King David all in one place. And if you're an ecologist like me, you drive down to the Negev, and you're in Africa, because all the animals and the plants and the trees are African. And then you go up to the north, and you're in Europe. So Israel is a very special place for many reasons. And the reason why Israel is so important to the world is because it is a meeting place geologically, geographically, ecologically, and as well as human history. It's a contact zone of all these continents. And that's why it was always a war zone. Everybody wanted it. And what is happening now in Israel is very, very confusing. How many of you have heard about, I'm sure Rabbi Moshe is dripping those things at you, I've noticed tonight, but how many of you feel that you don't understand what's happening? Don't be shy. What is happening in Israel right now is so multifaceted that it's really, really, really hard to understand what is going on. So I want to start by telling you who I am and why even though I've lived in the United States for 33 years, 10 years in Alaska and 23 years here in Miami, why I am Israel. Please feel free to stop me if you have any questions in the middle, okay? My grandparents, Yitzhak and Esther Ben David, came to Israel on the boat, the ship Ruslan, from Odessa in Ukraine in 1919. On the boat, they became very good friends with Yosef Trumpeldor. Yosef Trumpeldor was one of the heroes of the early wars against the Arabs that tried to prevent the establishment of settlements, not the settlements in the West Bank, but the return of Jews to Israel. Yosef Trumpeldor was amputated in the Russian-Japanese war. He was in the Russian military, and because of his experience as an officer in the Russian military, he came to help the new establishments of Israel. My grandparents became friends with him. When he went to Tel Chai, in the north part of Israel, my grandparents do the avodah, I don't know how to even translate it, the group of Israelis that came to build Israel. Yeah, they were laborers.
Yeah.
Their group of that was sent to Jerusalem. My father was born 30 days to the date of Trumpeldor's dying in battle. My grandparents named him Yosef, after Yosef Trumpeldor, Yosef Ben David. Where my grandparents came from, their history, we have a lot of folklore stories about the family history on all sides. I can spend months telling you those stories, but I will not. What I will say is that none of their families, no one survived the Holocaust. The only two people of extended, very religious families died in the Holocaust. We don't know how, we don't know when, they're gone. These are all the memories, all the documents, all the pictures, everything from that side of the family is gone. There's only one bit of evidence that on my grandmother's side, her family were descendants of the Anusei Sfarad.
Wow.
They escaped the Spanish Inquisition and somehow ended in Ukraine.
Wow.
I carry that DNA in my body. Most of my nephews have received Portuguese citizenship because we were able to show our lineage to, we look Sfaradim, I look Ashkenazi, but I am a mixture. We are a mixture.
Yay, me too.
Hey, see, I'll tell you, it's not in the school. That was my father's side. So my father was born in Jerusalem in 1920, 30 days after Yosef Trumpeldor died. On my mother's side, my mother's great-grandfather, not her grandfather, her great-grandfather, came to Israel in 1860.
Wow.
Before the Zionist movement, before Herzl, before anybody thought, they escaped Belarus from a pogrom. Okay? And they came to Jaffa. And my great-grandfather, his name was Avraham Yalovsky, his wife was Leah. They came to Jaffa, and he was a blacksmith. So what he did, he set up a shop on the caravan road between Damascus and Cairo. And his specialty was shoeing horses. And so he made quite a bit of money shoeing horses that escorted the camel caravans from Damascus to Cairo and back. And with that money, he bought land in a place that we call Nes Ziona, one of the first Jewish settlements outside of the holy cities of Jerusalem and Tiberias. In 1898, a bunch of Arabs came to his smithery, or whatever they call it, the shop, and after he shoot their horses, they murdered him. And on the wall of the smithery, they wrote with his blood, Etbach el Yahud, kill the Jews. Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin declared my ancestor, Avraham Yalovsky, as the first victim of the Israeli-Arab conflict. My grandfather was born in Nes Ziona to a very strong woman, but I can tell you stories about hell from here to the next world. Speaking Arabic and Yiddish. He learned Hebrew in school after Eliezer Ben Yehuda revived the Hebrew language as a spoken one, not just the one that we use in prayer. My father's parents were strong supporters, followers of Ze'ev Jabotinsky. Ze'ev Jabotinsky is the father of the right-wing movement in Israel. In fact, on my grandfather's grave, you know how we say a loving father, dedicated mother, not on my grandfather's. On my grandfather's grave, it says, עטרת גאון ותגר, על כל מעצור ומיצר, עם טל עולתרת, בלהב המרד, שא אש להצית, אין דבר. This is the battle cry of the right-wing movement back in the day. It's a part of a song that Jabotinsky wrote. My mother's side, the most left-wing, Mapai, possible. They got married.
You thought you had it hard here.
It didn't matter. In fact, what my grandparents on my mother's side were against wasn't that he was from a right-wing family. It was that he was a terrorist. My father was a terrorist, according to the British, because he was a member of the terrorist freedom fighters, Lehi. He spent 7 years in prison, 4 of them in Africa, when the British expelled the worst terrorists to Africa, put them in concentration camps. So it wasn't his political affiliation that mattered, it was the fact that he was an ex-convict. Oh, no, they never convicted them, they just arrested them, tortured them, and then put them in concentration camps. In fact, when my father came back after the independence, he was in prison in Africa, they were released after the Declaration of Independence. He tore up whatever he had in the right-wing Lehi movement and voted for Ben Gurion in every single election until he died. Why? Because he only fought the British to establish the state of Israel. My niece, remember we have called Sfaradim. My niece married a wonderful guy. His mother came from Yugoslavia, his father from Tunis. I have more Sfaradim genome than he does. We are all mixed. The one thing that really set the stage for Israel's success and for what I am worried will be Israel's demise is the fact that when Ben Gurion and all our founding fathers and mothers decided on the Declaration of Independence, that Israel will be a Jewish democratic country. Now, when all that was happening, Mapai, Lehi, Jabotinsky, Likud, everybody agreed that Israel will be the homeland of the Jewish people and a haven after the Holocaust. There is no question, Israel is a Jewish community. Because there is no other. Because I don't need to tell you how much anti-Semitism there is here, how much anti-Semitism there is in Europe, how much anti-Semitism there is in South America. We need Israel to be a Jewish, a strong, thriving Jewish state. But Israel is also a democracy. And that's what made Israel super successful. Because it gave women like me and my mother and her mother and her mother and all the women in my family the opportunities. We weren't to sit in the back of the bus. We weren't to sit in the back of the synagogue. I wanted to go study ecology in Alaska, go for it. My cousin wanted to be a pilot, go for it. All that human potential was allowed to flourish. But on that day, when they declared the independence of Israel, there was one deal they did, one deal they made, that also set Israel on the path we're on right now. Ben-Gurion tried to get everybody to agree to the establishment of Israel, and he faced extremely strong resistance from the Orthodox Jewish community. You'd say, why? Why? Why not? I mean, here comes the Geulah. But according to the most extreme religious orthodoxy, there has to be a Milchemet Gog uMagog, an incredibly terrible war, and only then the Messiah will come and save Israel. So these Zionists, these non-religious people coming to Israel, like my ancestors, were acting against the will of God. You cannot establish a safe haven for Jews without the Messiah. So what was the deal? The deal was that the state of Israel will facilitate, will financially support Jewish Orthodoxy. That Israel will allocate money, a lot of money, to kolelim, yeshivas, religious schools, where all they had to do was study the Bible. No math, no English, no literature, not just the Torah, the Talmud, the Gemara. They will be praying for the safety of Israel. They will be bringing the Messiah for prayer. A lot of money. But also excuse all the men that belong to those Orthodox sects from serving in the Israeli military. All the women, all religious women were exempt, but also these very Orthodox men. Instead of learning how to fly warplanes and helicopters and like me serving, mom serving, they were exempt. That was the deal. And Ben-Gurion made that deal with one of the most important people in my father's life, Rav Kook. Rav Kook was the only person in the world that the British allowed to visit the prisoners in Africa, to carry letters between the families, The only connection my father had for 4 years of living in a concentration camp in Africa with his family in Israel was through the Rav Kook. Rabbi Asurim, they called it, the prisoner's rabbi. He's the one who made the deal with Ben-Gurion. Why is that deal bad, and why is there a crisis in Israel right now? The crisis is not political. It is dressed in political terms right now. It's not Likud versus Avodah. It's not, I mean, there is no left, there's no left parties in Israel anymore. They're gone. The Mapai of all days is gone. The crisis in Israel is actually between those that make the money and pay the taxes and die in a war and go to the military and sacrifice years of their lives, and those who only take the money and don't serve the country. Okay?
Can I just clarify
Yes.
one thing? Not clear, I'm not interrupting. Just so people understand, there's Orthodox, and then there's what she's talking about is ultra Orthodox. And not even Chabad. Chabad is, for us, is very religious, but this is beyond Chabad. These are people who are very isolated, like you'd say maybe the Pennsylvania Amish or something. And also, there are modern Orthodox people in Israel that do serve in the army. I was on an Orthodox kibbutz. So they do everything that Merav and Noam and Igal and Matani did, go to the army, and they wear yarmulkes. But this is a different group. This is the people who were never even part of the government until recently. Sorry.
So when the deal was made between 75 years ago between Ben-Gurion and Rav Kook, Zichronam Livracha, these Orthodox Jews, this ultra, they were 6% of the population. Nothing. Israel is thriving, we're growing, we are one of the biggest high-tech countries in the world because we let all our human capital flourish. We build an amazing oasis in the desert because we let loose our human capital. 6%, sure, we can, fine, they're not working, they're not serving in the military, but there are so few of them, no wars. We can carry the burden for the sake of calling Israel a Jewish state. That wasn't 75 years ago. Any ecologist would have if I was in the room, I would say, no, don't come into this is bad, because of demography. Today, these ultra-Orthodox Jews are 12% of the population. If you look at the age class, 0 to 4, Aviv is an age class. Talia is an age class. The ultra-Orthodox Jews are of the whole population of 24%. Have you ever heard of exponential population growth?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What do these people do besides go to the synagogue and yeshiva and get money? They make babies. And we have an excellent health system in Israel. Everybody gets the same health care. We don't have these problems that we have here in the US. And there is infant mortality is minimal. And when you have a group of people dedicated to having more people, you have more people. In fact, many philosophers and ethicists are saying it is so good that this crisis is happening now. And not in 30 years, because in 30 years, they will be half the population. And then there's nothing we can do because they will have the majority. How come the crisis is happening now? Israelis for decades. I grew up with the same prayers and songs that you, even though I'm not religious at all, I'm an atheist, but it's part of my culture. Okay? I grew up in a Jewish state. I have never felt anti-Semitism until I got to Alaska. I didn't know what that means. Okay? I grew up Jewish. Okay? My culture, my affiliation is Jewish. I didn't complain back in the day. Mom didn't complain back in the day that I have to serve in the military, that my closest friends died in the war. Well, I was sitting with my earphones directing the planes, and they were dead on the ground. It didn't bother me. I accepted that ultra-religious people are exempt, that we forgave them when they pulled the flag down and burned it, because we are a Jewish state. But it's not happening anymore. Now, the non-religious, non-Orthodox religious people in Israel are saying enough is enough. Enough is enough. Because we cannot continue this way. This cannot continue. Now, how did it come about now and not in 30 years? It came out because there's one person who started as a great leader, had his heart in the right place, had charisma, family story that is, lost his brother in Entebbe, everything. He was part, like, salt of the earth. But got corrupted by power, and because of that corruption, found himself in a place where, in order to maintain his freedom and luxury of life, he has to take all the power, become a dictator. How do you do that? Well, you build a coalition. The system in Israel is different from here. Here, we vote for president and vice president, then we vote for senator on the ballot. You could have voted for Donald Trump, and people have in Wyoming. At least 6,000 people have voted in Wyoming in 2020 for Donald Trump and me. It's in the book. You can vote for the person. Our system for the Congress and the Senate are separate from president. We basically elect the executive and the legislative branches separately, right? We also have local governments. We can vote for Mark Gordon at the same time that we vote for Anthony Bouchard.
I don't know these ones as well.
One of my favorite. We'll talk about that later. The point is that in Israel, it doesn't work that way. You vote for a party. The party nominates who the head of the party, who they have a list of 20, 30, 50, top of the list. And so the Knesset, the legislature, then basically appoints the executive, and all you need to do is then create a coalition. If you don't have 61 votes, you make a coalition. So Netanyahu did after a mega hate and fake news campaign in his last election, he made a coalition with the ultra-Orthodox parties. And the way he got them to join him is by making two promises to them. And the first one is he's going to give them more money, because it always boils down to money. As of now, and it's not the end, 14.3 billion shekels, divided by 3.5. We're talking billions of dollars shaved off healthcare, education, military, food supplies, everything else. Shave everything and give it to support more of these men who go to yeshiva. And by the way, they don't even learn Torah. They have a free ride. So the deal was give them more money, expand the military exemption rule to include more, not just these ultra that go to yeshiva. You don't have to go to yeshiva. We will make the exemption even wider. Any guy who has a cap on his head doesn't have to go to the military. But there is one problem. You can't pass all this legislation because the judiciary can still say no. The Israeli Supreme Court can say this law is unlawful. You can't pass it, it's against all the laws of it. We don't have a constitution, but we have foundational laws. Okay? So what do? How do you get rid of the judiciary? You create a reform. You come and say, they are bad, they supported the Palestinian, they did, in fact, the Israeli Supreme Court over the last 10 years decided that 3,000 cases. Of the 3,000, only 22 had anything to do with any of the complaints of the reform. It's a hoax. It's a way to get the one last thing away from stopping the ultra-Orthodox Jews from pilfering, robbing the productive part. How many people in Israel pay taxes that hold up the entire economy? How many people live in Israel? 9 million people. Close to 10 million. But yeah, ballpark. How many people pay the majority of taxes that hold up the country? I'm not talking about the aid, the military aid the US is giving. That's substantial. I'm just talking about what the country gets from taxes.
5 to 6. 5 to 6.
You wish. 90% of all taxes in Israel are collected from 426,000 people.
Oh my.
426,000 people in Israel pay most of the taxes. High tech, innovation, startup. What happened since the reform was proposed in January? 80% of Israeli companies started transferring their assets to the United States. What is going to happen to Israel? What is going to happen? It's going to collapse. It's going to disappear. For us, this is for us in the diaspora. This is a major crisis. Right? Because there's one island in this entire world that is our safe haven. It's called Israel. And when Israel collapses, we don't have that. So what we need to do is support the opposition to the reform. We need to support the people who want to keep Israel as a Jewish democratic state and not the dictatorship held by autocrats. Now, why am I Israel? My grandfather, the one who followed Jabotinsky, had 24 grandchildren. 24 of us. 8 chazru b'tshuva, went back to becoming religious, ultra-orthodox religious. I grew up with my cousin Leora, as if we were twins, both on our grandfather's farm. We were born about a couple months apart. We were raised by 2 sets of parents. We grew up together. We were inseparable. She chazra b'tshuva, I did not. She has 11 children, all of them learning in yeshivas. She has 42 grandchildren, and that's not the end. She will reach 100, I'm sure. And her family is sucking money from my other cousin, who was a helicopter pilot. He's still teaching. He's older than me, but he still does reserve as a helicopter pilot teacher. He still does Miluim, even though he doesn't have to.
It's reserved.
One of the reserves is one of the 426,000 people who paid enough taxes because he developed a lot of high-tech stuff. So it's my family. My one cousin and her clan is sucking money out of my one cousin who is productive. His daughter is a pilot. I mean, that's why it's a crisis. It's a brother against brother. It's a cousin against cousin. We are all one nation. But this situation brought us to the brink. Now, any questions? Yes.
So the issue is you don't like paying taxes for people that aren't productive. I mean, I'm a Republican. I don't like paying taxes for people that aren't productive, whether that's people on welfare or getting housing here. 90% of the social program, so I could understand why you feel that way. 'Cause I feel that way too. But in terms of military service, it's best that I think that people should go home if they want to. Should be a volunteer service. But the Orthodox ones didn't want to be there. They're probably not good for it anyway.
I agree. Fine, perfect. Let's do that. How many people do you think are going to serve in the military? When, not here, when, we can be, and I also, whatever, there will be nobody.
I mean, I've deployed twice, and I think I've done this fine.
Good
So,
for you.
I think if we could do it here, they could do it there. People care about the funding.
No.
I want to ask you, what is the size of Israel?
Size of New Jersey.
Size of New Jersey. Now, think New Jersey. Okay, now think who is surrounding New Jersey? Big states.
Right.
Big states, which one? New York is a big.
But Danny, what's the
New York.
distance between us and Ashkelon?
Okay, now, think about
Minutes.
New York,
10 miles.
okay?
Less.
All the countries that surrounding New Jersey, okay? Come against New Jersey, okay? Think about
High five.
you need military to protect New Jersey, voters, at least.
I think that people would step up if they had to.
Okay, wait, okay, here we go.
I believe there are good people there and they
Those
would.
people have stepped up, but it's not enough. Now, those religious, ultra-Orthodox religious, the reason they don't want to step up is not because they don't want to help the Israelis or protect their country. The reason they don't want to step up is because they believe that God, if I will sit with the book and not do nothing, God will protect me no matter what. So they don't want to come and serve, but they are big heart that could serve and protect New Jersey. Without them, we don't have New Jersey.
Is this something similar to what happened in Germany? Because I spent a year touring with my husband after I graduated, after my undergraduate. And I was shocked that the Nazi Party was still alive and well in the late 60s and 70s.
One conversation. One
And they
conversation,
basically blamed the Jews for being placed in concentration camps and everything. They said, you know, we would send 10 men over or 5 men over with guns. And if 100 men or people came out, they could take away those guns and they could have killed us all, but they didn't. They said, no, God will protect us. And I mean, that was a conversation. Thank God I didn't spend 9 months in Germany because I'm sure my husband would have been hysterical with my attitude. But it sounds like Israel has adopted, even though the same thing, when you have a group of people who will not stand for themselves and protect themselves and expect someone else to do it for them because they believe God is on their side instead of God helps those who help themselves.
So that is part of the, probably, I've never studied the psychology of the Holocaust, but the thought of, yeah, God will help us, so this cannot be happening to us because we are the chosen people.
Yes.
Led to a lot of people's dying. I mean, 6 million Jews died and 1 million kids died in the Holocaust.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and you have, I mean,
And-
what the one that survived were people who either joined the partisans or were saved by locals. I mean,
And it sounds as if this problem is repeating itself.
yeah, that's the same mindset. They haven't changed. My cousin went back, became Orthodox. He's actually in the same kollel, the same yeshiva as my grandmother's father was in Lithuania on my mother's side. He's in the same, he's in a Ponevich yeshiva, and he is the one who doesn't want his kids to go to the army. He was in the military before he changed, but he doesn't want his kids to go because God will save them. And I'm like, your entire yeshiva, including my ancestor, my great grandfather, died, but the Nazis killed him because he prayed instead of fight. That's what you want.
You can pray while you fight.
You can pray. Yes.
How many people who are eligible to vote in Israel actually vote? What's the?
So actually, compared to here, pretty high. It's about, it used to be 80%, but it has declined. People have become very apathetic, and it's about 60% now. What happened was, many people in Israel just gave up, and they said, "Ah, it doesn't matter, all Bibi has to do is get on television 2 hours before the polling stations close and say the Arabs are sending buses of voters from, you know, and then all his base go out. And he's done it. So yes, I think what is happening now with all the protests, and I really highly recommend to you guys to get online and look at some of the protests. The reason why the protests in Israel last so much longer than they did in Hungary back in the 2010, and in Poland 3 years ago. The reason why it's happening so strongly and so at such length in Israel is because of the creativity. People turned it into a happening where you express your opinions, not just by marching in the street like we did, the women's march in DC, which I went to, by the way. Not just marching in the street, but there are shows, and people create art, and there are exhibits, and people make plays. These marches are artistically super creative. I enjoy watching them even beyond. So I highly recommend, for example, when they passed the 14.3 billion shekels transfer of funds from all the other programs to the yeshivas, a group of people created rocks from cardboard. That's for you. You should watch that video. Matani, find it for him. Huge rocks from cardboard, and made themselves look like slaves carrying the debt. And it was an incredible expression. And so I think it's like, when I was young, we used to do folklore dancing, Israeli folklore dancing in the streets.
Right.
That's about the atmosphere of these protests, so not your regular protests. Yes.
I had a question.
Yes.
There's saying that I recently, I think, heard Lashana Hara, which if I'm not mistaken, translates to next year. I was wanting to know that.
To me,
Yes.
I'm in Jerusalem every day.
So does the prayer?
It's a prayer that's done at Passover, what you're thinking of, next year in Jerusalem. So, yeah.
No, next year in Jerusalem, the building, Jerusalem.
We'll live in, like this year we'll live in Jerusalem. Next year we'll come and pray. Yeah, to me, it's what I do every day.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is a question, but I'm going to phrase it in a little bit instruction for everybody. Just because there's only so many areas that Merav can cover at one time. And to your credit, you chose this particular issue of the ultra-Orthodox. What does it have to do with you and me? So when you were a kid, you read utopias and dystopias like 1984, so imagine a dystopia future for Israel. We're going to have hopefully a trip to Israel next year, our synagogue or our area. And I'm going, in July, as I said, and I'm fluent in the language, and I'm sure they're going to take me into a room and ask me, what are you doing here? Of course they'll see my passport, but they'll still want to know something about my orientation. Imagine that you go with your family, and if Israel were to become a theocracy, like Iran is a theocracy, and you come into the room and they sit down and they say, your child is wearing an earring. And are you gay? It's fine, you could be gay here, but we have to keep an eye on you. Your wife is wearing a rather immodest dress. She has to change into a long dress. Maybe not a burqa like you would have to in Iran, but so imagine if Israel were to become an ultra-Orthodox country, and then, you know,
I wanna cut you off. You think that we'll come to Israel and they take you to separate room and investigate you?
me, no, but imagine,
And
you know,
anybody
if
is
this,
talking about it.
if the,
So,
the-
Rabbi Moshe.
Yeah.
It's already happened.
well, so that's what I mentioned,
Women
why should
women
Americans
were
just share?
turned off a bus
Oh, that bus incident, yes.
in Ashdod.
Yeah.
If you go to some stores, the women faces are covered in a purple dot circle. So you can't see women. There are sects now in Jerusalem that dress like with burqas in Iran.
Mhm.
I mean, it's happening already before the reform even passed.
Also in the States.
Hmm?
Also in the States, you have the same.
Oh, I know, I'm not saying this is heaven on the
But I wanna tell you something.
Yeah.
Okay, because I have a question, but before the question, I give you some
introduction.
okay? And what you said, okay? I was like, looking it like I was supposed, okay? It was very amazing thing, and, okay? Because I grew up as a Haredi in yeshiva. I got forced to be a rabbi. I did not study in math, English, nothing. I was forced to be, and I've been in this section of the group. That was military. Israel, they were flying to the independent day because Torah or whatever, and then Minagoyim, and all kind of stuff, and I saw what they did also in the Shiva, rabbis, when I had the strength and the power to go out and say, no one will do nothing to me anymore, it was too late. I had a lot of lack of knowledge to go and start school. So I had to be in a regular school. It's called half yeshiva, half regular school. In the morning you study the Torah, in the afternoon you study English, math, whatever, but I had a hard time to keep up. I did not do the same. And after 1 year, they did not take me to the next. So I had to go to start to work, and then the time that military. The military didn't want to take me because my background, because I cannot pass all the tests, cannot do nothing, or they said you cannot come to the military. I was fighting it to come to the military. I had to go higher levels to convince them that I it's okay.
What's your
Okay. I got accepted to the military, and I felt I won. I loved it, but to be in the unit that I was, because it was 5 units, I did not have the right profile. So I had to go upper level also and talk to psychology to get to that high profile, the 96, to stay 97, to stay in that unit, and I did it. All of them was surprised because everyone went to that place to drop the profile and get out of the military. I did the opposite. Okay, so what I want to say is I've been in the 2 sections, 2 parties. I saw it from the inside. What is my question for you? Yes, you're right about the religious, okay? They are making a lot of kids and growing up and brainwashing the generation and everything, and the thing belief. What about the other section of the big majority of the Israeli party that and I'm not calling them Palestine, I call them the Israeli Arab. They're also the same. They're growing up. They are in the Knesset. The Knesset is in the party of Israel. Okay, they get in majorities, a lot of things. Okay, and what if they will be the 50% and majority? Then what will happen to Israel? The same.
Yes, so this is A very good point. Very good point, because the same thing that is happening to the ultra-Orthodox Jews is also happening to the ultra-Orthodox Arabs. There are a lot of Arabs in Israel that are part of regular society. There are so many Israeli Arabs that you would talk to them, you see them in the street, you will never know that they're Arabs. They are completely assimilated. They speak Hebrew better than some Israeli. But there is also their older Orthodox, and they are having the same demographic issue. And it is something that is getting the attention now. For example, this morning, while having my morning coffee at 5:30, I was listening to one of the Israeli philosophers that said, let's not ignore this problem. If they want to stay Israeli citizens, they have to accept that Israel is a Jewish state.
Not gonna happen.
And if they don't, if they have a different allegiance, then they'll have to find a place for themselves in a Palestinian state. And that was his argument for why we should still think about, even though geopolitically it's nearly impossible, at least somehow to have a Palestinian, independent Palestinian state. So people who don't want to be Israeli yet live in Israel because they got stuck where they got stuck after the independence war of 48, they can have an operation. So people are not ignoring that.
So if you do two parties of states, where is the place? It's so small.
Well, I suggested that we not try to
Yeah.
solve all the problems.
No, I
That's-
just
I just
trying
wanted-
to,
Yeah.
you
I
know,
just wanted to
discussing.
explain, because this is confusing.
It's, yeah.
It's very complicated.
You got it.
I want to make two provocative remarks. Okay? I'll start by saying that I'm Israeli as well. I'll start by saying that my background is exactly as yours, exactly the same. And I was very active in the Israeli politics. But I, again, two very provocative remarks. One is the problem is not the agreement between the Rav Kook and Ben-Gurion. The problem is that exactly what you said. Israel cannot be a Jewish country. It could be a it could be a country for the Jewish people, but it cannot be a Jewish country. There's a basic contradiction between religion and the state and the church. And those people, they are following what they believe is what they need to follow. It's God's words and the people that represent us. And I will not, I can explain much more what I mean by that, but I'll leave it at that because it's late. The second thing I'm going to say, even more provocative for you, unfortunately, you do not represent Israel anymore. You are speaking for this Israel does not exist. The majority of the people in the state of Israel do not think like you, do not see the world the way you see it.
They don't know what?
They do not think like you. They do not see the state of Israel the way you see it. They see it very, very differently. And I think you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Are you talking about?
Most of them are
Slobodan
very
or-
sympathetic to the Orthodox Jews.
Yeah.
Many of them, even though they're not Orthodox
You know, I
Jews,
don't know
they
what
vote for them.
news you're listening to.
The Israel you're talking about was the Israel of the 60s, the 70s,
No.
and it was gone. It was gone after 70. What was it that they could get to power? 81.
I have to
So why don't those
disagree.
people show up in Tel Aviv?
Today,
I
people,
have to
today
respectfully
people that
disagree.
what you say.
Look at all the polls, look at all the, people are not against the Orthodox people. They're against the leadership, against Gaffney, against
I agree.
Hoffman, against Levin. They're not against the people. Did you see
How
the
many-
videos from
How
the,
many people in Israel are liberal, educated, Ashkenazi Jews that
what
see
does
the
it have to
world?
do with Ashkenazi?
Oh, this got to do everything because you know
No,
exactly the
no.
situation.
Well, it's complicated. I mean, everything that I'm listening to this and I understand about half of it, but it's very complicated. But the parallel I'll give, and I'm just going to try to do this for our more Americanized audience. The parallel is in many countries today, Europe, certainly Hungary and Poland, and you saw it in Russia years ago, and Turkey, and now in this country even, there is a push afoot among people to say, why democracy is so messy? Why do we need it? You know, let's just come up with a different way of governing. And part of the problem is that the first things that groups like this go after, of the two groups they go after, are the press and the judiciary. And that's what we're seeing there as well. In terms of Bibi, his problem is, again, different but similar to Mr. Trump, in that he's also under not only scrutiny, he's already been indicted. He's been indicted for some corruption. Folks, it's Shabbat. We can't finish, but yeah, but this is, it's so important that we all remain engaged. And we should be very, very grateful that Merav drove down with no charge to the synagogue, had dinner with us, and we want you to come back and keep coming back. All right, so I wish everybody a good Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Hang out, drink, eat some more, drink some more, and don't go home without a hug, please. How do I end this? You know, the Israelis will start arguing.
Right.
No, actually, they're not that
Bubba, will
far
you take
apart.
and put this in the garbage?
What's it? Elias is very far from them, but Elias doesn't live there.